Wish Dragon. You know what's been a major influence in the movie industry lately? China. In recent years, the population has gradually become movie lovers to the point of accumulating some of the biggest numbers at the box office, sometimes even more than North America. In fact, it's because of that country why we have some of the biggest film franchises to this day, like Fast and Furious, Transformers, and even the entire superhero genre. In the case of animation, studios have been fully aware of the fact and want to take advantage of the situation by collaborating with Chinese animation studios to make magical adventures especially for them. This is why we've been seeing more animated films that are set in modern China like DreamWorks' Abominable and Netflix's Over the Moon. Of course, not wanting to miss a money-making opportunity, Sony Animation wanted to try their hands on a Chinese-oriented flick and got their wish from a little teapot that contains a mighty dragon. So now that Long is out and is granting wishes, will this movie feel like everything we've wished for? Or is this teapot a complete sham? Let's find out. The story. Let's start things off by pointing out the elephant in the room. The one thing that's been leaving people with a pretty subpar impression of this film just by looking at the trailers alone. The fact that people are giving this the label of an Aladdin ripoff. How some are so quick to dismiss it because it has a plot that has a striking resemblance to Aladdin with a guy who summons a magical being that could grant him some wishes. Let's be real. Yes, the story of Wish Dragon is nearly identical to Aladdin, but that alone should not be a reason to accuse this of being a ripoff. Keep in mind that Aladdin started off as a centuries-old folktale, and its original setting has often been speculated to be in China. So, if anything, Wish Dragon is more like an Aladdin adaptation that stays closer to its roots. But that doesn't mean calling it an Aladdin ripoff is inaccurate. You see, the biggest problem with the film is how it noticeably copies so much from another Aladdin adaptation. And not just any adaptation, it's copying from the most popular one, specifically the 1992 Disney animated feature. In regards to that one, it's common knowledge that it is vastly different from its original source material, which is why looking into Wish Dragon, it is unmistakable that it continuously takes elements from that film to tell its own story, and the Chinese theming is far from enough to differentiate itself. The prime focus of the peasant boy trying to connect with the rich princess, the magical comical being that grants the boy 3 wishes, the villains who seek out the teapot and gain control of the wishes by the climax, the emphasis on action and comedy, and not to mention some of the other details.
Now I've been stuck.
In this teapot for 1,000 years.
Phenomenal cosmic powers!
Itty bitty living space.
I wish.
Stop. It's not.
I can't make people fall in love with you.
No.
There's this girl.
Wrong.
I can't make anybody fall in love, remember?
If only I had a magical dragon that could fly me across the city.
I don't know, Abu. You probably can't even get us out of this cave. Looks like we're gonna have to find a way out of here. Excuse me?
And I wasn't going in hunting for all those similarities either. I tried to look at this for its own merit, but these parallels just keep on popping up that it makes it distracting from seeing it as its own movie. It ends up tarnishing the storytelling by not just feeling unoriginal, but almost plagiaristic in the way that it's as different to the Disney classic as much as the 2019 live-action remake. But let's say you can look past all this. Is there anything that this movie can offer that the Disney movie didn't? Well, there is, and they are some good traits too. The one thing the story has going for it is the heart, where it shows the friendship of Din and Lena, and how the former wants to reconnect with his old friend after being separated by social class for 10 years. When the two are together or show how they feel for one another, that's when the film's message of the importance of family and friendship comes into play, giving the feature a heartfelt soul that can have its genuine touching moments. That, and there are times when it does play with some Chinese mythology to establish the backstory of Long in order to separate its world building by making it more magical than it seems. Unfortunately, those moments are far and few between, while it keeps on filling the rest with narratives taken from Disney's Aladdin. It has some materials to make a strong and heartfelt story, but the problem is that it feels like it wants to be Disney's Aladdin more than it wants to be Wish Dragon. The animation. To its credit, the animation knows what it wants to do, and it does so fairly well. As it wants to be this fun-filled magical adventure, it wants the visuals to reflect that as well, or rather, have it be the driving force of the film's energy. The backgrounds won't be anything spectacular to see, since it is mainly set in modern Shanghai and is mostly treated like the typical big city, but it's the characters that the animators play with the most. The designs are meant to be charmingly simple, with an emphasis on everything having a round shape, almost like the style of Chris Sanders to make everything look friendlier and softer, allowing the designs to be more appealing to look at. As for the character animation, it goes for a more cartoonier approach, having the physics emphasize more the squash and stretch, and even go into some rubber hose for some of the faster-paced movements. Not exaggeratingly all the time where it can feel exhausting to watch, but more to make those moments feel playful and fun than to fully take it seriously. With some of the more tender times though, it does know when to settle down and go for more subtlety to let the mood of the moment take over. But the shining visual star of the feature is, of course, Long himself, where not only is he a lot more creative with his more comical expressions and his snake-like body, but also supplies some solid effects and brings out the most vibrant colors to make him and his magic stand out from the ordinary world.
Greetings, great master. The heavens have opened. Your wishes will be...
Probably the best thing about this feature is that it has some nice animation. It's well rendered, it has good designs, the movements can be fun, it's nice work all around. However, there is a catch that brings up a significant issue. I hate to do this again, but its style is another thing that feels like it's been taken from Disney's Aladdin. Yes, for the most part, that movie stays with the same Disney style, but what makes Aladdin's animation stand out more is how it's more cartoony. The way that characters like the genie, Abu, Iago, and more really play with their animated side with their expressions to help bolden the comedy, along with really playing up the action to show Aladdin in peril. In many ways, Wish Dragon does the same thing with its style in order to capture the same effect. Like with the story, it diminishes the animation a bit because it's just another feature that the Disney film is already offering, but in some ways better. Sure, some can argue that this cartoony CG style is like a signature trait of Sony Animation, but especially with this, they can never make anything that can live up to the visuals of Aladdin, let alone when compared to the works of Eric Goldberg's The Genie. But again, even with that comparison, it still doesn't change how the animation itself is still a good job. The characters. Through all of these Aladdin comparisons, are the characters able to make things up for those flaws? By this point, the people like Din and Lina can't just be a rehashed version of Aladdin and Jasmine, right? Well, thankfully, they are not. For the most part. Starting off with the two long-lost buddies, Din just wants one thing and one thing only, to reunite with his childhood friend Lina, who became a model and the daughter of a rich CEO, Mr. Wang. I'll give it credit that the opening is nice with the way it establishes how they were together when they were kids. It did go a little creepy years later seeing Din looking like he's kind of obsessed with her, but once the two reunite, that's when the heart comes in for the two to gradually return to simpler times. Admittedly, Din and Lina individually are not so great on their own, a bit of the typical long-lost friends from different social class archetypes, and Din does follow some of Aladdin's steps like lying about who he is with a wish in order to get to Lina, but it's their dynamic that makes their friendship work. They know that all the money and all the wishes in the world can't fill that gap that a good friend can complete. which fuels the engagement of the movie to see them ultimately get together.
Best friends forever.
I wish.
Then there is Long, the movie's genie who is of Din's service. Now, I do like how the film gave him a full backstory and how he became a wish dragon, since it was one of the rare moments that goes into Chinese mythology and helps flesh out the character to give him more layers. But other than that, it still doesn't change how he's just John Cho's version of the genie, but with an additional fish out of water element and an unappealingly selfish attribute. Not to mention that the humor in general of this film is pretty weak. So him trying to be comical is just a reminder that this is not making John Cho the next Robin Williams. There are also these villains that try to get the teapot from Din, but they have no personality whatsoever other than just being bad, and who they work for is predictable right from the get-go, even if they try to keep it a surprise. Also, I'd like to add that the voice acting, at least in the English dub, is pretty mixed. There are the main ones like Jimmy Wong, Natasha Liu Bordizzo, and John Cho that did a solid job portraying their characters, and it's nice that the movie did develop an all-Asian cast, but there's just something about the rest that feels a bit off, and their delivery is more awkward than the leads. Maybe it's their acting or the microphone quality, but they just don't hit it right in the same way as the main actors do. These are not the most memorable characters or even great ones, but it's what they mean to each other that helps fuel the heart of the movie. So, is Wish Dragon a ripoff of Aladdin? The answer is yes, it undeniably is. But does that mean it is a bad movie? Not really. Despite its complete lack of originality and the near shameless levels of copying Disney's Aladdin to develop its story, there are still some good elements that make Wish Dragon enjoyable in its own merit. It has some fun animation and has a really good heart to present the power of friendship and to give the movie a soul for having a meaningful purpose. Rather, if you want to watch this or not really depends if you can forgive this for how it really copies Aladdin. If you're able to tolerate that or can look past it, then you'll have an easier time to appreciate its good qualities. If the comparisons are too distracting, then it will only remind you that there is a better movie that's a lot like this that's actually worth your time. Funny enough though, I did actually get my wish. Might not sound like much, but all I wished for was this to not suck. And while I'll take Aladdin over this any day, at least it did come true.
So the sooner we can get this over with, the better.